So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the JW3 Friday briefing. In case there are a few new people, I'm Judy Trotter, Head of Adult Education at JW3, and a special welcome to everyone on Zoom and, of course, to Professor Sara Freedman. Thank you so much for joining us again. We both had to remind ourselves that the date that Sara came to us was November the 3rd. So only just a few weeks in from the 7th of October massacre, where we were still all in pretty much a state of shock, and universities were not having students in, schools were not having their kids in. And where are we now? So I started asking back a few people that were with us around that time to share an update with us. Just a reminder, or if you didn't hear Sara last time, it is up online, by the way, that she is the professor, is the head of the School of Social Work at Bar-Ilan University, and we have this lovely partnership with Bar-Ilan. As always, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I will ask them if there is time. So, Sara, the task is no easier than it was all those weeks, months ago. But as we approach the 6-month marker, let's hear what you would like to share with us today. With great thanks, as always. Over to you.
Thank you, Judy, and good morning to everybody. Judy and I were just speaking about the time, and it seems hard to believe that that's how long that it's been. If you'd asked me, I don't think I would have been able to say how long it had been. And I think that that's something that we feel a lot in Israel, that the time has in some ways stood still. It's still October the 7th. On the other hand, it's not. It's clearly, towards the end of March. And that's a confusion that I think we see all the time. So I thought I'd share with you a few things that have been happening from our point of view, and start off with maybe campus life. So yes, as you said, when we spoke in November, instead of having started our semester, we hadn't at all. We weren't sure when that was going to happen. It kept on being delayed and delayed. Many of our students and our faculty were serving in the army, and so it didn't seem possible to start at all at that point. In the end, we all went back around I think the 31st of December, which is a weird date from the UK, but from Israel's point of view, it seemed quite normal. And we shortened the term, so the semesters were much shorter, to try and allow to get in as much teaching as possible during this academic year. So one of the things that we did before we went back was we spent a lot of time at Bar-Ilan talking and preparing for conflict on campus. Now, at the time that we were talking about it, I don't think these things were quite as prevalent around the world. And we're very grateful to Bar-Ilan's leadership that they took the initiative on this and didn't wait for something to happen, but actually all the faculty, we all had an opportunity to have some extra training in dealing with conflict and potential for conflict. Now, at that point, remember, we didn't know what was going to happen, how people were going to be. We knew that everybody from the, cleaners, admin staff, faculty, and the students had all been through a terrible 3 months, but we didn't know how this was going to play out when we actually got back to campus, and we wanted to make sure that it was as smooth as possible. So it was an opportunity to raise issues and to try and think about how that might be dealt with. And I think that was a very important preparation. And it also came with the president of Bar-Ilan sending a message, very clear message, written message to all the students and all the faculty about what would be acceptable and what would be less acceptable in terms of dealing with difficult situations. One of the things that came up in one of the things I participated in was the worry that I don't know how many of you have been to Israel over the last 6 months, but obviously there's many more people who are carrying weapons. Guns are, but there's so many more soldiers and many more, and therefore many more weapons, and many more people who've gone and taken out a gun license because they're concerned about personal safety. And we were very, people raised that question of how that would be coming onto campus with people carrying guns. And obviously the main focus was that we have a smaller than some other universities, but a significant proportion of Arab Israeli students and faculty. And we wanted to make sure that that went smoothly for them and for everybody else, and everybody felt safe. And at that point, it was very difficult to know what would happen. And I think that that's something that when we've gone back has been remarkably normal. And in this sort of weird thing about having a war going on but normal things happening, but there I think it's things that have been very has been much smoother than we thought, and there's been it's been much easier even than previous conflicts, I think, in terms of how that's felt. So I think that that's a good example of that. Even when you're in the eye of the storm, you can still actually manage to have a campus with people who don't agree with each other necessarily on many things, but can still actually manage to have a successful environment. And I think that's very important. A glimmer of hope in all the other things that have gone on. In terms of the actual students going back, this is actually one of the things that I think is very emblematic of everything that's happened in Israel at the moment, is that obviously some people came back and had not been serving in the army, and so for them it was a relief to finally get back to studying. But obviously for other people it was much more challenging. We had, as I said, many people who were still serving even when we went back on the 31st of December, and many people who had family members. So we have a lot of young mothers, for example, in our second degree program, whose husbands were not at home, and they were working and studying and looking after small kids, all of which makes it very difficult to come in and actually, study and be present. So those were things that the universities dealt with, is try and actually come up with a way of some sort of formula that would allow those people who weren't back to not miss out too much. So to give them some sort of courses that they didn't have to do, or courses that they could be excused on, or having the ability to do the exams more than once, so that it would be more likely they'd be able to manage. And one of the things that they did was, and I don't remember the exact date, but there must have been sometime towards the end of January, I think, all teaching stopped for 1 week. All the students who had been studying just had a week off, and that week was in order for the soldiers who had come back to catch up. So there was an opportunity for them to not fall behind even further. And I think that that sometimes that meant that if it was only 1 or 2 in a class, then they got private teaching for that week. And obviously this hasn't been a solution that's worked perfectly for absolutely everybody, but I think that in general in Bar-Ilan there's been a feeling that the soldiers who've come back have been, it's been made as easy as possible. Not perfect, but as easy as possible. But that sort of balance between some people are carrying on with their life as normal and some people are not, has been very, I think, characterized by what we've had to do and the teaching that we've done. We obviously have some faculty who are still serving in our department specifically. Most of them managed to actually come in and teach in between doing everything else. We have one who is so busy that she hasn't been able to teach at all. Different departments have, different challenges when it comes to this, but it's been something else that has had to be dealt with. And I think that it's been quite difficult for many people, that transition for coming back. I assume many of you have heard from family members, maybe, how hard it is to have spent 3 months maybe either in Gaza or on the northern border, and coming home just very, very briefly, in maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks only for 36 hours, and then suddenly to be released and then go back to normal life has been quite a difficult transition for many people. It's very hard to do that. My son, who said I have permission to share this with you, he said, you know, what the thing I'd really want to be doing is actually sitting on a beach, but you know, I can't possibly do that at the moment. And apart from anything else, he, like many other people, although he's been released, it's only temporary, and he already knows that he'll be going back and when he'll be going back. And so any studying that he manages to get done now is that's the only opportunity he's going to get probably for this academic year. So those things are difficult, and for some people also to see. We had a visitor from Canada who came to, as many people have done. We're very grateful for this. So when you come on missions and help, and it's an incredible thing for people in Israel to see, and it really makes a difference. And one of the things that she said was that she couldn't work out, like, all these people are sitting around having coffee like it's a normal life, and that's very apparent that it's very difficult, that some people are absolutely still carrying on as normal, which is very, very important, but for those people who came back, that transition is a little harder. So we will continue to try and make sure that soldiers don't fall behind and are able to complete their studies, but it's a challenge, and we'll see what happens over the next few months. So one of the things I wanted also to touch upon was, and I don't remember in November where we were on all of this, but there's been incredible initiatives within the Army in terms of mental health support, which I think has been something that's unprecedented anywhere in the world. One of the things that has happened was that mental health officers were actually accompanied soldiers into Gaza, and were there for them if they needed to be, which is, I think, never been done anywhere in the world. And the other initiatives that they've done include every soldier who finished has a day or 2 days of some sort of still in the Army unit, but an ability to talk about how to carry on and transition back and deal with things. And there's also a lot of outreach, as a new units have been set up to help people transition back, and for their to not for people who are not necessarily exhibiting any problems, but they know how to reach out. And so everybody gets WhatsApps, you know, here are your alternatives, here's what you can do. And all the way through the war, the number of mental health officers that were recruited meant that the ability to get help straight away was incredible, and really unprecedented. So one of the things that we have been working on, myself with some colleagues who we're all part of, there's a National Council for PTSD, was one of the things that we were concerned about is that there's obviously going to be great needs, and there's clearly, and I think we definitely talked about this in November, not nearly enough mental health facilities even before the war, and so there's going to be bottlenecks and there's going to be problems. And one of the things that really makes a difference is the ability to assess who needs treatment and who doesn't. So one of the things that we have been working on is similar to, in concept, to sort of a home corona test. So Judy, sorry, I didn't realize quite how relevant this was at the moment, but if you think about over the last 4 years, like how many times, you know, you feel like not 100%, so you've gone and done a corona test, and then you know that you're okay or you're not okay, and you know whether you need to do anything. So we wanted to have something that was similar, a similar sort of concept that would allow people to A, be reassured if they were okay, and B, to know maybe that they should reach out and go and get some help. One of the things that we know happens in general before the war anyhow with people who suffer from trauma is that they often avoid going for help, and so it's important to know if you need. But the other side of the coin is that there's a lot of people who are, I guess, what you would call worried well. So, you know, people, I've heard many stories of this, of specifically from parents who've like, well, my son's just come back and he can't possibly be okay. He says he's okay, but he can't possibly be okay. He has to go and have therapy. Now, that would be you know, I don't think it's a great idea, even if we had all the resources for absolutely everybody. But when we don't, that's going to cause many, many problems, because people who don't actually need help are going to go and ask for help. So what we've done is set up an online assessment, which is completely anonymous. It can be used differently, but the basic version is completely anonymous, so like your home corona test, and it incorporates several different scales that have been used in the past. We haven't done anything new here, we've just put them together in a new way. And it has an algorithm that if you answer some of the questions, you know, that you're feeling fine, then it doesn't ask you anymore, and if you answer some of them yes, then it will carry on asking you questions. And we spent time, obviously, consulting with experts around the world on how to do this, and what, you know, what should be how we should build it. But the nice thing is that it gives you a little printout at the end, and it says on the little printout, you know, you seem to be fine, but, you know, if you're concerned, then you can just redo this in a week or in 2 weeks and see how you're doing. On the other hand, it can also give you a printout that says, you know, you seem to have some you know, some distress here. It might be worth thinking about redoing this and seeing whether things change. Or if, you know, the levels are quite high, then it gives you a suggestion that you go and seek out some help. And because it gives you a little, you know, because you have this printout, you can actually go to somebody, whether it's your general practitioner or somebody else, with this and give them to them. So you've actually they can help maybe put you in touch with the right source, the right resources, which might help further. So we're hoping that this will be something that will be taken up by lots of people. Again, it's free, it's anonymous, and so hopefully that will be useful. It's actually also been used in a non-anonymous version within the army, and some hospitals are picking it up because it's helpful to use it to see how people are doing, and whether people need to be helped any further with that. So that's something that you know, hopefully will make a difference. One of the things that we've definitely noticed, that although there's obviously a concern about people who have or are developing post-traumatic stress disorder or any other type of pathology as a result of what's been going on in the war, there's also something that we want to make sure that we don't pathologize too much, that many people are very distressed. And I think this probably is something we talked about even back in November, that it's quite normal to be very distressed when these things happen. It's quite normal to come back from the war and not feel like, you know, your life is the same as it was before, because it isn't. And those things tend to change over time, and people tend to find that after 3 or 4 weeks, or I'm not sure we know the time frame at the moment, then things will calm down. And so, you know, I think that's important, that message of not everything is something that needs help, and is something that won't change by itself. Clearly, some of these things are going to depend very much about what happens. When Judy and I talked just before we started about, you know, this idea that we might actually have an endpoint and hostages will come home and everything will be finished, seems very far away at the moment. There's a lot of worry here about what's going to happen in the north, even in the press here, let alone, I think, in the press in the UK, which I follow relatively closely. There's very little about how bad things are in the north, but they are very bad. And so that's, you know, something. There are rocket attacks every day, sometimes as many as 30 or 40 rockets, because there's basically nobody living there at the moment. Then fortunately, very few people have been injured or killed, but it is an ongoing situation that is very worrying for many people. So we'll see what happens with that. The other thing that we've been we developed and have been using both in a civilian setting and the army setting is a new way of trying to help people with the life skills very early on in terms of coping. So it's a very short protocol to help people. So, for example, in the army, some people like soldiers will be sent back for a few days of help, and then maybe sent back to the front lines afterwards. And this has been something that they've implemented across the way. I think, I'm not sure at what point, but we train something like 600 mental health officers in this within the army, and plus several other hospitals in using these types of things. And the idea being that, similar to what I just said, that most people are going to react because things are difficult, but there are ways of actually helping with that, to make sure it doesn't develop into or give people more control over those things. And so for in a civilian setting, it's things like making sure you know keep to routine, even though it might be very difficult. In the army there is a routine, so, and it's not under your control, so that's slightly different. But certainly using things like sport and breathing and other skills that can help people with strong emotions, to deal with that and not become overwhelmed. So those are skills that I think that we've seen that people are finding these things are helpful for many people. And I thought I'd finish with talking a little bit about Purim. I don't know how many of you have been in Israel for Purim. Purim might be one day in the rest of the world, but in Israel it usually lasts about a week. It's like the longest festival, especially if you've got little kids, because you know they dress up for 3 days before and 3 days afterwards, and it goes on. And it feels very different this year. It's much quieter. And we will see Sunday and Monday, you know, within Jerusalem. But my feeling at the moment is that usually by now you'd feel it much more. I saw this morning a few people dressed up, because today's the day the kids go to school dress up. So I saw a few people, but many fewer than I think than normal. And one of the major differences is, I think if you've been here for Purim, is that lots of kids like throwing, I don't even know what they're called, little explosives that, you know, make horrible noises. And so there's been many people who've said, please don't sell them or don't use them this year. And really, there's been a very remark difference in how much you've heard them. I'm not aware of hearing it at all, and I walk around quite a lot. And so I think that's been something that's been that's very changed, that's changed, and people have been asked, you know, when they do dress up, then you know, to do that with a certain amount of sensitivity about what you're actually dressing up as, and it would be things that would be upsetting. So it's this balance between having the festival, but doing it slightly differently. And I read a beautiful post by a mother of a fallen soldier. So he, I think, was killed about 2 months ago. And she wrote about how difficult Purim is, because, you know, you're meant to be happy and she can't possibly be happy. And she came to the conclusion that she was going to continue with some of the things that she had always done. And one of the things that an idea that she felt expressed maybe where she was holding was an idea from Bretzlav that you dance not because you're happy now, but because of a future happiness. And so she felt that was quite a good way of looking at Purim, that she wasn't happy now, she couldn't possibly be happy now, but she was going to go through it because she hoped to be happy in the future. And I think that's probably a bit like what most people are feeling at the moment. It's very hard to feel that everything is not back to normal, but there's still hope that at one point we will be able to do that in the future.
Thank you. That's a brilliant place to finish your thoughts on, and I think it's the lovely one. I think we're having the same Purim thoughts here, and it's not a whole week for us, but certainly I assume today the kids have gone into school dressed up. I don't have a Jewish school around here, so I don't see them passing the window. They just make a lot of noise. Thank you so much. I mean, it was remarkable how much you were able to share that was new and yet built on when we last talked. How the emotion's still there, but not, as we said at the beginning, not with that same intensity. And it was so interesting. I hadn't heard about the mental health support that go in with the soldiers, which is remarkable in so many ways, but also because it means that when the soldiers are talking to them, they know that they're being understood. because they're in the same place. Whereas
Yeah.
if you're coming back to a city, that
Hmm.
surely must feel very different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that will continue, of course, because they will have always been there, because what we're talking about is both short term, medium term, and long term, and hopefully where there is a time where people are back at home, but when this will have to be dealt with in a different way.
Yeah.
So sorry, let's just turn to the questions. You were talking, we have had this mentioned before about more guns being touted
Hmm.
around the streets. You immediately have a vision of America, but of course it's very different and the situation is very different. But are there instances of guns being let off accidentally or on purpose and causing injuries and worse?
I haven't heard of anything, so I can't say that I know that that has happened. Certainly, it's very, yeah, I agree. It's very different to the United States and the issues that they have there with gun control. I think that there is clearly some worry from certainly from colleagues of mine who work in the domestic violence um, field, that this is something that is worrying as a trend and something that many of us don't feel that comfortable with, because it's not something we're used to at all. I mean, it's not the same as the UK in terms of never, like, very, very rarely seeing it, but it still feels, it's very different here. But so we'll see. At the moment, I haven't heard, but we'll see.
Yes, and of course everyone is taught how to handle a gun, which is with the training, which again doesn't happen
Sure.
in most countries. And so just taking that one step further, I'm assuming I know the answer because you didn't mention it. Someone's asked whether the students are allowed to bring weapons into the university campus.
I think that if you have a license, then they are allowed. Although we were very concerned about this before the semester started, I can't say that I have been made aware of it, particularly walking around campus. We've just finished the semester last week, like a week or so ago. I don't, there's a few soldiers who are in uniform who come with their
Oh,
guns, but apart from that, I'm not actually that aware. So I think we were much more worried about it than it's been apparent. Certainly in my department, it's not something that's been an issue in the way that we were concerned about.
that's definitely the right way round, better that
Yeah,
way than the other.
yeah.
And do you know, maybe a bit an unfair question, but do you know whether this is similar on other campuses? I don't know whether how much you're in touch with other colleagues.
In terms of the gun
Well,
specifically
this
or the general.
preparation you did.
Oh, some people and some places. I think Bar-Ilan were very, from my talk to certainly from other departments of social work where I am in contact, then I think Bar-Ilan was unusual that it took the initiative itself for everybody, as opposed to people saying, maybe we could help with this. But I think that other places have been dealing with this just maybe, differently, and I wouldn't necessarily know exactly how.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, it's very different from our campuses who are having to deal with things, but without the background that Israel's always had. It's
Mhm.
there's even though it's not new, the escalation has caused um, issues how to deal with it. So one of our regulars is actually in Israel, I think for a few weeks, because it seems to be a couple of weeks since mentioned. And she saw many children and teachers dressed up in Tel Aviv this week. But she's suggesting, and maybe it is being done, that it should be emphasized that the Mishlach Manot packages should be given to the IDF. I'm assuming that being Israel, that's probably being done without being organized. Is that the case? No.
I'll tell you one thing that I have seen. I mean, I don't know about organized and whatever. I can give you two examples of things I know personally. One is that in Bar-Ilan, every person who unfortunately lost somebody, like a bereaved family, was sent Mishloach Manot from the university. which I think, it's obvious, but, it's still nice. And the other thing is, which is connected to what you're saying, it's very normal for around Pesach and Rosh Hashanah for large firms to give gifts to their workers. And one of the options for one of the firms for this Pesach is that you can actually donate the whole amount to a charity. And I've never seen that before, even during Corona. So I think that, yes, there's clearly, like, people are continuing to volunteer and to do things and to give, and yeah, no question. And every instance of that is really heartwarming, and it's something that it's really important for me to say from here, that everything that anybody has done, especially from abroad, really means so much. We really appreciate every single thing that's done, from the tiniest contribution to more significant ones. They're really appreciated.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, we do what we can. It never feels enough, and I think, as you say, people going to Israel, it's be applauded, and a lot of people volunteering and trying to help out without trying to get in the way as well. It's a very difficult line to
Sure.
go. And at JW3, we're still doing what we can. We have the love locks on the bridge for people to sign for the hostages. We have posters that have been designed. The program, obviously, this program continues on a Friday morning. And as always, if you have names, I have a list of people I haven't approached yet, but I'm happy to have that added too. So if you want to suggest people, that's always welcomed.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sara. You always speak so beautifully and from the heart and with so much information. So thank you so much. It's a shame to say that it's really nice to see you again, but I hope we meet up in London sometime.
That would be great.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you. Wish you all Shabbat Shalom and Purim Sameach and a safe and healthy weekend, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.